Welcome to the first live broadcast in our new series, Business as Unusual. I'm your host, Bridgid Nzekwu. As we enter the recovery phase of COVID-19, businesses of all sizes are tackling the impacts and learning to adapt to the new environment. I'm delighted to be joined by a group of economic and industry specialists who will share their insight and practical guidance on how businesses can survive and thrive in these uncertain times. We'll be discussing operational and leadership approaches, as well as first-hand business experience of responding and adapting to the crisis. My guests today are Tony Danker, CEO, Be The Business, Mark Griffin, CEO, ITT Hub, and Jeavon Lolay, Head of Economics and Strategy at Lloyds Bank. The panel will be answering your questions during the programme, and you can submit those questions now on the right of your screen. The panel should be able to answer as many questions as they can during the show, so please send your questions straight away. Any questions we can't answer during the programme, we'll answer afterwards. And remember, you can tweet us at business as unusual. That's hashtag business as unusual. So I'm going to start proceedings, kick off by going to Jeavon Lolay. Jeavon, can you first of all set the scene and talk us through the key impacts of COVID-19 on the UK economy?
Good morning, Bridget. The pandemic has had a profound impact, not just on the UK, but on the global economy. Unfortunately, however, the pandemic continues to accelerate, so therefore we're far from over in terms of dealing with this. It is most importantly a global health crisis, and the response to which has led to one of the sharpest economic slowdowns in history. Three of the most striking features in relation to the UK relate to economic activity, which has collapsed in the second quarter. So GDP at the moment is on track to be down by almost 25% in the second quarter, compared to the pre-COVID peak in Q4 2019. Positively, the low point is probably going to be April, where we had the midst of the mandatory lockdown, and therefore the recovery is well underway. Nevertheless, it's unusually uncertain, and the outlook will remain very much dependent on what happens with the virus.
Tell us,
secondly,
what's happening in the different sectors of the economy? Any patterns or trends emerging?
In terms of the sectors, I suppose there's two key things to highlight. The first is that, just like every household, all sectors have been affected in the UK. But what is the case is that some sectors have been significantly more affected than others. The greatest negative impact has happened to those sectors which require the most social interaction. Now, the challenge here is that activity is still well below what we saw pre-COVID. And what we need to wait and see is whether this is a temporary feature or whether this is a permanent change in behaviours at a consumer and business level. So it's still quite uncertain for some sectors.
Thank you, Jeavon. Tony, I'd like to turn to you next. The pandemic has presented an existential threat for many firms, and they've had to react really fast. What have been the most innovative and creative responses you've seen?
Well, I think you're right to describe the drama, and it's been in phases. I mean, the first few days of lockdown for most business owners have been, quite shocking, traumatic, high impact. Then I think what happened is people made a lot of very big decisions. They were forced to take very big decisions. And you're right, some of those were about fundamental innovation, fundamentally innovating the business model, new products, new channels, even new customers. And that we saw a lot of that in lockdown. Actually, the truth, Bridgid, is that restart is proving a lot harder. Because in theory, the choices aren't forced upon you now. Nobody quite knows where the patterns of demand are going to end up. And so whilst in the first 3 months of this crisis, we saw what we think was about 3 years worth of innovation, restart is now quite an uncertain time to be running a business.
What are the patterns you see emerging?
Well, I think we see a drive towards three things, which, by the way, in the long run are pretty good for productivity. It's just taken a global pandemic, unfortunately, to stimulate them. The first one is this innovation I described, where, necessity is the mother of invention. People have had to find new ways of building business. There's been a lot of innovation. The second one is technology, and it goes way beyond the technology you and I are using right now. It's about people thinking, actually, I need to tech enable a lot of different parts of my business. That might be about e-commerce to reach customers. It might be about cloud computing to store my systems and processes and data. And the third one is obviously about efficiency. People are now really, really focused on profitability and margins, and every single penny and pound counts.
More question before I move on. What mistakes do you think businesses need to really try and avoid right now?
Yeah, look, I think the most obvious mistakes, I think, first of all, are to think that with such a dramatic event, that you are supposed to, as the leader of the business, have all the answers, and therefore you have to sit at your desk, scribble a few notes, and then make some big decisions. So the first thing I'd urge people to do is stuff like this, is to engage with their peers, to learn a lot about what people are doing, how they're responding to lockdown guidance, or how they're responding to profitability squeeze, because everybody's doing this together. So don't go it alone, number one. That's mistake number one. And I think the second thing is don't slow down. I think the pace of change now will continue at this pace for some time. We've all done an enormous amount of stuff, made an enormous amount of decisions and a lot of change in the last 3 or 4 months. Just because lockdowns ended doesn't mean that everybody should slow down. I think we're going to have a year or two of very fast and agile decisions by businesses in the face of the uncertainty. So please don't slow down.
Thanks, Tony. Mark, let me come to you. As CEO of ITT Hub, what was the biggest challenge you faced at the start of the pandemic?
Thanks, Bridgid. Morning. Well, the biggest challenge was lack of time. You know, we were just 9 weeks away from our first edition of our new event at Farnborough Exhibition Centre. We'd invested hundreds of £1,000s to get to the stage where we were, and we were in a good place. We're really excited at delivering a completely new event for road transport. Innovation was at the heart of it, as Tony's just referred to. Trade event focused on bus, truck, van, last mile, coach, electric, hydrogen. You know, and we'd got 100 exhibitors. We'd even got British astronaut Major Tim Peake and the Minister of Transport coming along to make an address. So 9 weeks out to be that far with sleepless nights, resulting in the decision to ask ourselves, could we get people to come along to an event in 9 weeks? The answer was no. So we too had to make a very speedy decision to postpone.
And how did things progress as the weeks went by, you know, at the sharp end of this pandemic?
Well, over the weekend, the key thing was communication. We made sure that over the weekend we must have had 11 meetings with board, venue, event planners, stakeholders. We looked at all the options. It was clear that to be responsible, that we had to postpone. And I was in Ireland at the time. We just landed, and as the Irish government closed public spaces and venues, I actually was at the sharp end, realising that our decision to postpone was brilliant, and it was the right way, responsible way going forward. But speed, making decisions so fast, tested all of us.
Tony, Danker, if there are 3 things businesses should be laser focused on at the moment, can you tell us what those 3 would be?
Yeah, look, I'm going to repeat the 3 from earlier because I think they're proving vital for surviving through the crisis. The first is innovation, because I think a lot is changing, and some of the consumer patterns, some of the employee patterns are probably going to shift fundamentally. So if you're not already responding to those trends, you really need to start. The second one is around technology. There is a big technology opportunity now. And I think what's happened is that people are growing in their confidence and capability to use technology. And it should be the time to realize those gains. And the third one is about margins. The hardest thing about restart is that all the cost comes back, but you're not sure the revenue does too, because we don't know where demand is. And so that focus on margin, that focus on efficiency, that's going to remain true until we're back to normal patterns of demand.
And the biggest lesson that companies could integrate into their plans for the future? Narrow it down to 1.
I would probably say technology. I would just say this is the time to do it now. I think that employees have got really used to it. Customers have got really used to it. Partners have got really used to it. this is a time probably to start embedding a far more tech-enabled way of working.
Mark, is that true for you? Has technology played a part in how you've been adapting since the initial shock? What have you learned as a business over time?
Absolutely, lots of learning come through it. You know, we realised more than ever we're in the road transport sector and the event sector, and that's been hugely challenging. You know, there's 200,000 logistics enterprises in the UK. Logistics contributes 130 billion to the economy, 4 million vans, 400,000 HGVs. The coach industry, worth 6 billion to the economy. We realised that we were right at the heart of making sure that the economy goes through, because people have been having deliveries to their houses every day, getting to work through public transport, and technology is at the heart of public transport.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm now going to open up to our first audience poll. And if you look on the right of your screen, you'll see a tab marked polls. You can find the question there, and the question is, do you feel confident you will be able to operate fully as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels with appropriate social distancing in place? That question again, do you think you'll be able to operate fully as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels with appropriate social distancing in place? And you can answer yes, no, or don't know, and we look forward to your responses. Jeavon, while the business as unusual team crunches the numbers, can you tell us from a macroeconomic perspective what you see as the key recovery factors for the UK economy?
Sure. Well, as already been mentioned by Mark and also by Tony, this is a rapidly evolving situation. So there are many possible paths for the economy from here. In the near term, I think with the economy opening up, a lot of the focus is going to be on demand. And basically that demand is going to depend on consumer behavior and business behavior. So by far the main priority at this stage is going to be to contain the virus, to reduce the infection risk. And that's going to be key to improving the willingness of consumers to spend, but also providing the confidence to businesses to think about expansion and at least restarting. So crucially, the main priority for the recovery is going to be controlling the virus. The second major thing is going to be what happens to the labour market. As a lot of people are aware, at the moment, the labour market is very reliant on government support. A significant portion of people are getting their pay now provided by the government. Going forward, how that develops in terms of implications for unemployment itself, but also the fear of unemployment, will have a significant impact on consumer confidence and also an impact on demand. So those two are the key factors. I think the labour market and also, as I say, most crucially, the path of the virus.
It is a really worrying time, because we know that the Prime Minister has pointed at the fact that the virus seems to be surging in parts of Europe and wants to make sure that that doesn't happen here. So that really is critical, isn't it, keeping that virus at bay?
Yes, the vigilance and the responsiveness of governments is going to be absolutely critical. So as I mentioned at the start, the global pandemic is still accelerating. We're in a situation where in the UK, we've done a really great job and we've got the virus down from the sacrifices made by the public. But, we're going to have to remain sort of vigilant that there are many ways this virus can re-enter into the economy and broader into households. So I think going forward, that is going to be key. The test, track and trace is going to be absolutely crucial. And the public adhering to these rules will ensure that the government can get to its measure in terms of opening the economy, but also the economy can move into recovery a lot quicker and more strongly than otherwise.
Thanks, Jeavon. Well, we asked, do you feel confident that you will be able to operate fully as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels with appropriate social distancing in place? And we now have the results of our first poll. So we're going to bring those up on screen now. And we can see that just over 48%, so almost half of you, do feel you can operate fully as a business in line with pre-COVID-19 levels. Almost the same amount, 44%, said no, it's not going to be possible for you to operate fully as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels with appropriate social distancing in place. And then a small minority, 7.8%, said don't know. Very interesting results there. We'll put that straight to our panel. Tony, can I come to you first? Is there any surprise there in the figures?
I'm not sure there's surprise, but I think there is warning to the Chancellor. The Chancellor talks a lot, as Jeavon will know, about the scarring effect of the crisis. In other words, will activity levels reduce, and will they reduce permanently? And I think what that poll shows you is that at least within the line of sight for most businesses, almost half of them feel that for their own business, there will be scarring, i.e. there will be reduced economic activity. You could look optimistically and say lots of people are already working out how to get used to social distancing, or you'd be pessimistic and say almost half feel they can't sustain it. Given that, as you said, there may be second waves, third waves, even if they're localized, I think we're all going to have to find ways to work with the virus, to be successful in our businesses with the virus. And so that chart, I think, gives us all lots of work to do to work out how we're going to be able to pull that off.
Mark Griffin, which part of the sectors do you think you would fit into? Are you in the 50% of businesses that feel they can operate at pre-COVID-19 levels with this social distancing in place? Or are you in your sector in the other half who don't feel they can operate at pre-COVID-19 levels?
I think it's an emerging trend literally week by week, Bridgid. We're seeing some of the SMEs now planning ahead because technology is key to drive the future of road transport. Many events have been locked down for ages. I don't see the days of big motor shows and budgets coming back quickly, but with transport underpinning many of the aspects of the UK economy, I'm in the camp that road transport can play a big part to that, as can events. We've all missed face-to-face more than anything, and businesses generated from face-to-face engagement. And I think responsible events in many sectors will play a part in helping us start getting a lot more positivity and business performance back to where pre-COVID levels were.
Jeavon, would you agree that maybe a hybrid model is going to be what we're going to see? We're going to see some businesses work with social distancing in place, and others, as Tony and Mark have discussed, innovating, taking a digital, online, remote approach.
Yes, we're definitely already seeing that. So particularly in terms of online traffic and people moving away from face-to-face. I think the other thing to bear in mind as well as the mandatory restrictions, there's also voluntary restrictions. Individuals are choosing not to interact in certain sort of areas where they think the risk is greater. So I think the big aspect here will also come from confidence. So the more confident people get, that the virus is under control, etc., the more they're probably likely to sort of do things they weren't doing before. So let's make no doubt about it. The world that we're operating now for businesses is not as efficient as it was previously because they're having to make a massive investment in ensuring that the health position is much better than before, something that they considered before, but not to this extent. So it is a challenge for businesses because they cannot operate the same level of efficiency as before. So going forward, as that's reduced in terms of efficiency, the focus is going to be how's the best way to operate in this new environment.
Jeavon, you mentioned confidence though, and that brings us very nicely to our second audience poll, which is a question about confidence. Again, you can submit your answers on the right of your screen. And the question is, how long do you expect it to take before you are fully operational as a business in line with pre-COVID-19 levels? How long will it take you before you are fully operational as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels? And can you answer fully operational by Q4 2020, Q2 2021, Q4 2021, or in 2022 or later? We look forward to your responses. Tony, while we wait for those numbers to come in, it's clear there are still very tough conditions ahead. There's talk of potential second wave as we head into the flu season in Q4. Lots of tough decisions still to make. You talked about the tough decisions at the beginning of the pandemic. Many businesses are still making those decisions, aren't they? What should the priorities be for businesses now?
Yeah, look, you're right about that. Our recent polling that we've done says that actually there's about a third of businesses fall into a third, a third, or a third. A third are innovating like crazy, and they're really trying very new things, very radical ideas, products, services, customers, and channels. A third are saying, do you know what? I'm going to wait this out. I've been in business a long time. This is going to pass. I'm going to stick to my knitting, and even if I have to shrink a bit, I'm going to stick to what I do. And a third are a bit more undecided. They're really looking hard at whether to make some radical shifts, some big decisions. They're just not sure of when to do it. And I understand that. I think all of us are going to be watching patterns of demand in particular. How many people are coming to my restaurant? Are people coming through my shops? What's the mix between my online store or my face-to-face store? All I can say is that I think people need to be innovating and testing and learning rapidly. And hopefully, when you see pockets of success, pockets of demand, you go after them. It's a bit like drilling for oil. And when you think you get something, then go after it. That's actually what people did during lockdown. And I think probably that same mentality of trying to experiment and see where there's demand you can get behind is probably the way to deal with the next 6 months.
Mark, I think you were going to come in at one point there.
Yeah, I'd agree with Tony there that what lockdown has done for us, it's been a stark reminder that our ITT Hub proposition was probably more key than we'd realised. We've all had experience a taste of much cleaner air and nowhere near the congestion that we all suffered from pre-COVID. But for us to have a sustainable transport future, everybody wants that. We've probably realised that hopefully one day COVID-19 is going to go away, but net zero is not going to go away. If we're going to achieve net zero for road transport, both in public and commercial, then companies have to invest. Companies have to look at innovation. They have to work in collaboration. They have to get partnerships. And that means working together, whether you're an SME, a PLC, infrastructure. The only way we are going to get to that clean air target set by government is by working together. And therefore, events like ours and collaboration is a key post-COVID.
Okay, Tony, briefly, you wanted to add?
Look, I think people should not underestimate how this question of pace. I sometimes describe the crisis for most business owners as being like a game of musical chairs when the music stopped and you looked around and wonder if there was a seat for you. And a lot of businesses felt exposed by the crisis and they thought, I haven't been innovative enough, or I haven't been lean enough, or I've always talked about doing X, Y, and Z, but I've never done it. And I think there's been a big rush, either because of margin squeeze or because of the radical nature of the times we're living in. People have had to be decisive. They've had to make choices. They've had to innovate quickly. And I think that continues. I think if people are hoping they'll restore some level of normality into the cadence of the way your business works, I don't think that's coming. I think this idea of fast moves, quick moves, agility keeps coming back. And so if you've been putting off decisions, I don't think you'll be able to put them off for very much longer.
Thank you, Tony. Well, we asked you, how long do you think it will be before you are fully operational as a business at pre-COVID-19 levels? And we can have a look at the poll results now. Very interesting. So almost 20%, almost a fifth of you are already fully operational. So congratulations to you. 14, almost 15% said they could be fully operational at pre-COVID-19 levels by Q4 2020. So by the end of this year, which is excellent. That would be about 35% in total, if my maths are correct. But the majority, almost 40%, feel it will be Q2 2021 before they are fully operational at pre-COVID-19 levels. And 13% by the end of 2021. But a sizable minority, around 12% of you said it will be 2022 or later before you can get back to pre-COVID-19 levels of business. Jeavon, can I come to you first, actually? That's quite a big chunk, isn't it, of businesses, 12% roughly, who say they won't be anywhere near normal operations until 2022.
Yeah, no, that's a very large amount of businesses. And I think what we need to be accepting also is that we're still very early in this pandemic. So we've only had a few months of it, so a lot could change. But I think what for me in terms of that survey is it's going to take quite some time to get back to normal. So a lot of talk that we have as economists is when will the economy return back to its pre-COVID levels? The results of our survey say it's going to take quite some time. So although we may see some strong recovery, it's still going to take a long time to sort of make up what we have lost in terms of GDP in the last few months.
Mark, can I come to you? I mean, almost 20% of businesses are already fully operational. Did you think that number might be a bit higher?
No, it didn't, Bridgid. I think that's probably reflects where our presence in the sector is. If you look at some of the big, if I take some of the big British bus manufacturers, for example, there's a situation there where if these businesses are not rebooted quickly, if the government doesn't support them with the promise of the 3 billion funding to get 4,000 new zero-emission vehicles on the road, those manufacturings won't recover, and they will probably be into that end survey of post-2022. It's essential that we don't prevent those companies from going bust. We need to employ people. We need to get this new technology. It's the real opportunity to accelerate the journey to net zero. I firmly believe, and I know many of the companies we talk to, we think that net zero is a real opportunity to help get the economy back on its feet pre-COVID. I haven't got a crystal ball as many people would all of that crystal ball to see at what point it is. But unless we invest now, I think it's going to be a lot further off to be beyond 2022 that people are able to get their businesses back to where they were. Easy to stop a business, very, very difficult, as Tony said, to restart and reboot.
Well, the poll findings really do reflect that. Jeavon, what's your comment on the majority? I think it was about 40% said it will take them till Q2 2021. So that's effectively a whole year, isn't it, since the start of the pandemic?
Yes, no, it's a whole year, but as we're trying to emphasize, I think this has been a fundamental change. We haven't had this sort of shock, in modern times, and the response has been unprecedented as well. So lockdowns at a global level, at a national level, these are all new types of policies. We didn't have this in place with the global financial crisis, for example. So dealing with this is going to take time. But also, as I mentioned before, the behaviors of individuals are also fundamentally changing. So unfortunately, there will be sectors that are more significantly impacted, which will find it much harder to get back to normal. But there will also be those sectors that are able to move quicker and will probably take advantage. So we're going to see a bit of a mixed bag. The challenge, I think, going forward, though, is that for those sectors that are the most vulnerable, inevitably, if we lose people there or the businesses disappear, that will have spillover effects to the broader UK economy. So I think we have to do what we can at this point to understand what the long-term implications are going to be for the economy and try and put in place policy and sort of structures to ensure that the limits to damage are reduced. So, we can limit the damage to the economy because of this very major shock.
Tony Danker, I see you nodding away there. And looking at those poll results overall, what reflections do you have for our watchers?
Well, I think what they don't show, but I think is going to be required, is that people are going to need to grow just to stand still. So even if I think, let's say in a year's time, I'm going to be back to where I am in total turnover terms, there'll be a lot of volatility within that. There will be some categories, some channels, some products that die away, frankly, or certainly reduce in terms of revenue. So you're going to need to have growth in your business just to stand still. That might be new products. It might be your e-commerce business. It might be, I don't know, new audiences, or it might be some stores, but not others. So I think what people can't do is just hope that there's a normality that sort of automatically defaults to pre-COVID levels. There will have to be a lot of growth in your business in the year ahead to make up for lost categories, diminishing areas of demand. So it's probably worth asking even now, Where's the growth in my business in the year ahead that's going to make up for lost time and lost revenue?
Mark, can I quickly come to you? I mean, what will you be doing differently in the future?
Well, Tony makes many of those comments resonates with us. We as an events business rely very much on magazines and printed media to promote what we're doing. Many organisers have to do that. Those magazines are falling over. We've moved really swiftly and embraced the digital culture over the last 12 months, 12 weeks, should I say. We've introduced a series of free podcasts. They go out now weekly. We'll be rolling out more right across the next 3 months in commercial vehicle, bus and coach sector, logistics. We have to do that differently. That's the only way we're going to engage with our clients. We're having to adapt to customer needs, so making it more affordable for people to take part in the events, making sure that changing mindsets is what we have to try and do. The event sector's got some fantastic organisers, but unless you can change mindsets, it's going to be really difficult. So interacting in different ways, making sure your product and your offering for your clients and letting them know that you can support them is really key. So we are listening to the clients and hopefully trying to lead them together to find solutions.
Thank you very much, Mark. Well, it's time now to take some questions from the audience. Thank you for submitting those on the right of your screen. If you haven't actually submitted a question yet and you'd like to, there's still time. Please do that. And let's go to our first question from the audience. And this one is for Jeavon. What are the main downside and upside risks to the UK economic outlook?
Right, a very good question. For me, both the main upside and the key downside relate to the evolution of the pandemic. You know, as you said, it's the dominant sort of feature we're in now. So in the UK, you know, a lot of the opening up that we've seen is because we've got improving virus metrics. So it's absolutely crucial to keep reducing the virus as far as we can to reinstill that confidence, both in businesses and households. So if I'm thinking about the key downside would have to be the risk of a second wave. Now, if we were to have a second wave, when that happens, how severe it is, what it results in terms of a lockdown, a further lockdown, what it results in new government measures, all of these are unknowns as of yet. And the other factor with it will be, you know, whether it's just in the UK or it's happening around the world, or around, as you mentioned, in Europe, it's already starting to pick up. This has significant implications for overall confidence. On the key upside, it's also related to the virus, as I mentioned. Encouragingly, we are hearing a lot about new vaccine developments. And I think a breakthrough medical treatment or an early large sort of scale vaccine operation for COVID-19 could be a potential game changer if it were to sort of change people's perceptions and also reduce some of this health emergency, which obviously is at front and center of all of our minds right now.
I'm sure the entire audience would say amen to that. You know, let's get a vaccine. And good luck to the researchers who are trying to develop one. The next question is to the whole panel. And Mark, I'm going to ask you to answer this one first. How does the panel think we can engender more long-term thinking among business owners? That's a good one.
That is a good one. I mean, my message here, it's not all doom and gloom by any means. I know we're all suffering from post-COVID, but the message to those that are coming into employment, that there's some amazing apprenticeship schemes out there crying out for younger people to take up, certainly in the transport and the event sector. It's not all about going off and getting degrees at university. And I think that mindset with companies, certainly SMEs, that can get the people of the future into technology, into transport and learning a skill. We need more skilled people in this country to help us get through it, for businesses to thrive. So there will be some upsides when we come through this.
Tony, can you give us your answer to that one? How can we engender more long-term thinking among business owners?
Well, I think the opportunity here is to make long-term thinking very short-term. I mean, I think if you think about the big things that we've wanted our business sector to get better at, whether or not it's, I don't know, use of technology or employee engagement in the way we manage staff or net zero, actually, I think what's happened is these things have shot up the agenda and the time to tackle them is now. And one of the reasons for that is that what we've learned, and I've been talking to some businesses this morning already about this, is that staff are highly attuned to dramatic change quickly. They all want to know from management, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? How are we going to be future-proof? How can we change and how can we help? So I would say this is the perfect time to not necessarily do long-term thinking, but to solve long-term questions right now, because I think employees, partners, customers are ready for actually quite bold shifts in the next 6 to 12 months.
Mm. Mark, you wanted to add something, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that there's more of this on the hoof. I think many business owners, and I find myself in, certainly after lockdown, none of us have got the answers. So being open and honest with your work teams and your clients is really, really key. But actually being able to be really adaptable, really nimble and make decisions quickly. It's going to be tough and we're not all going to get the right decisions. Everyone wants that crystal ball. But I definitely agree with Tony that we have to be able to adapt quickly. That does need government support. We need to protect many of these industries before they slip away, and make sure that we've got a cleaner, safer and sustainable future, certainly in the event sector and the transport sector where our interests are at heart.
Mark, the next question is for you, so I'm going to stay with you. And the question is, how did you work with your suppliers to ensure uninterrupted flow of services to keep business on track?
Well, strangely, before we actually advised some of our key clients that we were going to postpone the show, the first thing we did was engage with all of our suppliers. We wanted them to make sure they didn't hear it second, they heard it first from us. We made sure that they would stay with us going through our postponement plans, and then we engage with our clients, because only with having a solid basis that your suppliers are on board. We see very much our suppliers as our partners in this journey, and I can't thank them enough for supporting us through this. My message there to all businesses is treat your suppliers as a partnership. Be honest with them, be candid with them, accept that you might have to renegotiate, but be honest and be frank. And together, so far for us, that's been a definite step in the right direction.
Thanks, Mark. Tony, the next question is for you. What are the essential leadership qualities to help business survive through times of crisis?
Well, what I think has happened from business leaders I've spoken to is that there's actually been a surge of confidence, funnily enough, on the part of business leaders as a result of lockdown and the pandemic, because I think they have been asked to make really big decisions. One business leader said to me, I've taken 20 big decisions in a week where I would normally take 2 a year. And I think actually they have built, we all do well in a crisis. Well, we usually do well in a crisis and we discover strengths and skills that we never had, and we become practiced at taking big decisions. I think there's a few tricks here to being a successful leader in the months ahead. One is, yes, to make sound decisions and to root those decisions in a bit of advice from experts or mentors, quite a lot of talking to peers to try and give yourself the reassurance that actually you're making a good decision, and a lot more staff engagement. I think staff are unbelievably attuned to the scale of the challenges now. I think they're very on board in supporting their firms to win and leaders to win. And I think they're very much part of the solution rather than the problem. And I think that actually those three things, get expert advice, look around, see what your peers are doing to test what you think are the right ideas, and bring in employees to the solution space. Bring them in early, keep them engaged, and make them the champions of the change. That's the kind of leadership behavior I think we're going to see a lot more of now.
Mark, as the leader, having experienced and continue to experience this crisis, how have you changed as a leader? What of your qualities have you developed or enhanced?
Well, I found myself very early taking the view that being honest with the team, getting up for work each day, and as Tony's saying, faced with making some huge decisions, it is pretty stressful. We're all working from home. This call here, we're all working from home. Your family see the behaviour that you're doing. So, being honest with your staff and being able to engage. Get the time whenever you can to get together over face-to-face meeting. We had a face-to-face meeting with our team this week, and the decisions that came out of that would not have happened on a Zoom call. And we were all in it together. We're all feeling we're in the same boat going out one direction. We might not end up in the direction that we're heading right now, but sharing with your team the answers quite often lay within your team, and just be honest and be prepared. Be prepared to make some mistakes along the way as well, because don't put yourself under pressure that you're going to get every decision right.
The next question is for Tony, and it is, this is a difficult one. You need a crystal ball here, I think. What does the future look like for British business? There's a lot to unpack there, actually.
Wow. Well, look, I think it looks more dynamic. Again, I'm going to, repeat an old answer about pace. I think now there is likely to be just a very high pace of change in businesses and in sectors. The pandemic has fundamentally reshaped certain sectors, and it's going to reshape consumer behavior and employee behavior. And so I actually think, and this gives me cause for optimism, I think you're going to see a lot of dynamism. I think you're going to see a lot of business trends that people have talked about for years accelerating. Look, from a macroeconomic point of view, Jeavon is better placed than me to try and do the crystal ball thing as to what that means in aggregate. But I think it's going to be a pretty dynamic place to be working. And I think that, cruising is not an option. There's going to be a lot of change, and everything's going to move quite fast. So I'm not sure that's a good enough answer for a very big question, but I think that gives you a sort of cultural sense for what it's going to be like to be running companies in the next couple of years.
Well, we're going to go to our final question for today's programme, as we're approaching the end of the show. This question is for Mark. How important is the ESG part of the green recovery, and are businesses taking it seriously enough?
I think they're beginning to take it seriously. We are right in the heart of a stage where decisions on investment for zero emission transport was there. A lot of people making progress. What COVID's done is put the handbrake on for that. And I think what to do, we've got to take the handbrake off, and we've got to, as I said, embrace technology and embrace low emission solutions and zero emissions. There are many, many solutions out there, some fantastic manufacturers ready to embrace zero emission technology. But if we don't support those businesses and don't support that supply chain, it's going to be gone for a very long time, and we will be going backwards. And as Tony said, we need to jump forward quickly. We're all on a journey together. And I think investment and recognition is really key by government.
That's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank our panel, Tony Danker, Mark Griffin and Jeavon Lolay. You've provided us with some really excellent insights and advice on how businesses can adapt to this COVID-19 environment. I'm sure people will be putting into practice straight away some of the lessons and pearls of wisdom. And thank you to you, the audience, for joining us for this live broadcast. Could I ask you now to spend a few moments completing the feedback questionnaire that's on your screens? It won't take you long. It is important. It'll help us to shape our future broadcasts. And we very much hope you'll join us for future broadcasts. Bye-bye.